So quick disclaimer, this is a continuation of a series that I'm filming that has to do with the Chosen One fly design. So the Chosen One is this pattern, but I'm showing you guys different ways to weight it. So if you want to know how to tie this fly and get this silhouette and do all that, check out the Chosen One bare bones bulkhead tutorial. If you want to know how to manipulate the silhouette, check out the Chosen One bare bones jerk fly edition. And then if you're a floating line fisherman or to have a different action counterpart to those two flies, come back to this one and check out how to weight the heads. So let's dive in. How's it going, everybody? Gunnar here, and today I'm going to show you how to tie lightweight variations on the Chosen One. So check it out. So when I'm talking about lightweight options, I'm talking about things like bead chain, talking lead eyes, brass eyes, and all the sizes, small, medium, large, whatever. But I also want to demo how to use lead wire. We're going to use the 030 from the accessories kit, and how to just simply wrap it on the shank, and where to put it and why, and kind of how to move your head around it so it's not impeding any tying. But I also want to show you how to construct a Mark Sedotti style keel box, which is how I would weight a jerk head. And so far we've covered unweighted flies. The bare bones bulkhead and the bare bones jerk head were both unweighted. Now I think that it's extremely important to have kind of both ends of the spectrum. If you're going to have a weightless fly, you should have a weighted fly, and you should have something that's in between. Because jigging actions, flies that kind of dip and dive and they never stop moving, are successful in their own right, and jigging is a successful trigger in its own right. Not everything should suspend and hover, and a lot of times you want to move a fly really quick and it needs to flutter and it looks like it's running away. That's kind of the whole point of having some weight in a fly, right? The second thing it's going to allow you to do is fish a different section of the water column. It's going to get slightly deeper. And obviously you're talking about weightless and then kind of mid-column and lower column, right? And we're focusing on that kind of mid-column right now as far as not changing your technique or how you're manipulating, but simply just adding some mass to get it down deeper. So, and thirdly, this is going to be extremely applicable to anybody who fishes a floating line. And the whole reason why is, those first two patterns that we covered, bare bones bulkhead, bare bones jerkhead, are weightless. And they will fish subsurface on a floating line with a long leader because it's no trapped air whatsoever and a fairly heavy wire hook. It will slip under and it will fish. But in order to bang the bank and work a fly fast and actually kind of jerk strip it and animate it at a good quick pace and get reactionary strikes, and you're talking about banging the banks on a floating line in a river, tying these lightweight versions is extremely successful, and it's one of my favorite ways to fish kind of low and clear water, right? So this is, if anyone has ever checked out my slow jig clouser pattern, this is kind of my favorite variation of it, this Chosen One over these lightweight platforms. So this video is solely focused on the head, and we're going to dive into three different options real quick. And the first is just simply lead wire, getting it on the shank, how to make a nice kind of step down so that I can palmer a really clean head and build a bulkhead platform that's weighted. The second is going to be how to construct a Mark Sedotti keel box using that same 030 lead wire, and that's going to be for your silhouette counterpart in the jerk category, and getting a fly that's going to have a slight jig but maintain that high and tight silhouette that's going to be properly keeled without necessarily putting weight down on your bend. And then thirdly, I'm going to show you how to integrate this around lead eyes, which could be bead chain, it could be brass eyes, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to show you how I wrap the head so that I have a nice clean head with no thread valleys, perfectly distributed around this, and get a nice clean front edge. So hopefully this video is nice, quick, and fast paced. And what we have in the vise is currently the lemon head color combo. So head to the material kit page and give that a look. So let's dive in and check it out. So anytime I'm working with the lead wire, this is the 030, which stands for 30 thousandths of an inch diameter lead wire. But I like to put it on a spool. I just find it easier to work with. But what we're going to do is, and first and foremost, you have to understand that you can use this in a varying degree of weights. I could put 12 wraps on here. I could wrap the whole shank. I could just put 5 or 6 wraps right up here at the head, right? Now what I tend to do is if I'm fishing this on a floating line, I'm not afraid to use 8, 9, 10, 12 wraps, right? I want some weight in there so that I can get that bug down about a foot and fish it nice and fast and really bang the banks. And so I'm going to focus this kind of really in the third mark, just so that I have it balanced with all the kind of viscosity of my head and my collar and my front stack wings, and I get a nice kind of little head dip in my jig. So I'm going to take that, we'll start kind of in the rear third, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now that didn't make it all the way up front, which isn't a big deal. You can just cut that off, take the ends of it and shove your fingernails into them to really get it to wrap around, and then you can just slide it, push it back and forth. And that, to me, back that up a little bit, is about perfect. Now when you start your thread, I'll just start it right up at the eye, walk it back here, and then I'll draw out my thread and catch it behind and start putting some thread wraps behind. You can draw your thread way back over, catch it up front, draw your thread way back over. And what I'm doing when I'm drawing this, I'm creating these thread spans that go across my lead. So now, when I go and wrap my thread over this, those spans are stopping my thread from digging into that lead wire and kind of getting it to separate. Not that, and you know, it's never going anywhere when you fully wrap your thread over it. It just helps you make a nice clean kind of foundation, and that lead is really pinched between two things of thread, and it's never going anywhere. Now you go back and tie the fly per normal, but when you come up to do your strung fuzzy fiber in a dubbing loop, what you're going to want to do is simply take your thread and walk it up and down and up and down and up and down, so that you have a nice gentle slope up here, and you don't have that thread boom step down onto a hook shank. But you just have this gentle slope. And when you go to create your dubbing loop, don't super glue it, right? Because if you super glue this, it's going to make it really hard and smooth. And you go to palmer that down, it's going to want to slide and run forward on you. It's going to be really, really frustrating. So instead, leave this nice and raw. It's going to increase your friction and really help that head to pack on there, and smooth this out with your thread right down to that hook shank. And you'll be able to walk that all the way down and build a super clean bulkhead that's lightly weighted so that you can fish it on a floating line. Now the second option for weighting this head is for the silhouette counterpart to the bulkhead, which is going to be your jerk head. And one thing to take note of is jerk heads are not stable. They're not happy being stuck in this vertical orientation, but it's that orientation that gives them such good action. And so that high and tight head really wants to lay on its side. And so instead of taking lead wire all the way around this shank, which is going to be uniform, we're going to stack sections of lead wire underneath the shank, creating a Mark Sedotti keel box. And Mark Sedotti is simply a tyer who, as far as I know, created and was the first to implement this style of weighting a fly. And the whole point is that that weight being under the hook shank is helping to orient that and guarantee it tracks straight. But it's also going to function as a way to tie a lightweight version that's going to fish on a floating line, but also help maintain that high and tight silhouette. So what you're going to do is, instead of just wrapping this around, you're going to come up and pull this out. And for this pattern, and again, it's all variable. It's how much weight you want, how much keel you want, how fast you want it to sink. But I'm going to cut, you know, if you put this up here, I'm going to cut short little sections about that long, about 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to make about 9 of them. So once you've prepped your lead, I got 3 sections of 3 here. You're going to come up and start your thread right up the hook eye. Put down just a nice little thread base right here. And I'm going to tend to use the same exact placement that I did for my lead wire. But on the lead wire, I was able to integrate it around the hook shank and then make a tube of thread that kind of went up and enveloped it, so that my head wasn't like staggered or hard to palmer. And this, I'm kind of intentionally going to do the exact opposite, in which I'm going to stack all these and make a really flush edge, because they're all going on top of each other, and you're going to palmer your collar up on the edge and then bring it down off the edge. And I'm going to actually show you a dubbing loop and how that looks to do. I'm going to try to intentionally create a nice clean edge. So I'm going to take my 3 sections here, aiming for kind of this 3rd mark on the hook, and I'm just going to hold them more or less vertically. I'm not really that worried about how they lay, and when my thread comes over, it'll kind of force them down. And if you just give it 2 wraps, you can manipulate them so they're all right on bottom, nice and flat and happy. I want to push that one up a little bit and just create a nice little rectangle of lead right on the bottom here. Put down a thread base, and then we're going to grab our next section of 3. And again, you could do 2 sections of 3, 3 sections of 3. You could cut them a 1/2 inch long or a 1/4 inch long or an 1/8 inch long, however you want to do it. And it's something that you're going to have to design yourself for how much weight you like, how long your leader is, what pound tip it is, right? Because your tip is going to affect your drop rate and how much resistance the eye of your fly has. And you might have to design it for what notch you use, right? If you use a loop knot, your fly is going to be able to dip down and jig more aggressively than if you tie something like a uni knot to your hook eye or an improved clinch to your hook eye. So this is all about you guys, equipping you guys with the tools to kind of design your own amount of weight here. I'm going to come in with the last one here, turn this up so you guys can see it, and stack that right on top of my keel box. And palmer that down. And of course I would super glue all this in place so it's nice and lashed down. But you can see I have a really clean front edge right here, right? And the whole point is that when I create this dubbing loop, I'm going to basically wrap my collar back up in here, and then I'm going to bring it up underneath and then wrap my entire head on the hook shank. And I'm not trying to bridge this because this would be a really hard gap to bridge. It's not like I just doubled my shank diameter and I can just walk up to it, but I have like, 3 shanks that I'm trying to jump real quick, and it's easier if you just step it off. So real quick, you could tie your tail in first. That would be the easiest way to do this. Tie in your keel box, and then I'm going to put that middle wing right here, right at the back of that keel box is where I'm going to put that mid-body wing and your peacock curl and whatever accents you want to do to the fly. That way it's all up on top of this keel box. And use this keel box, because the keel box is an oval, use it to help displace those fibers and create that high and tight wing. When you palmer it, you get it 360, you pinch it, you pull them and separate it so you have this really elongated profile before you tie it down. Now I'm going to create a dubbing loop real quick and show you what it looks like to walk a dubbing loop down a keel box real quick. Now my dubbing loop is ready, and what I'm going to do here is, this is such a bulky section of the fly because I just built this really big keel box, so it's actually going to take up a much larger circumference. It's going to use up a larger amount of your dubbing loop. So I'm only going to shoot for about 2 turns on this loop. So that's going to be 1 full turn. That's going to be my second. Now you can see right up here, I'm basically figure eighting over the top, so that as I come underneath, I'm going to simply walk that thread right up in front. And now I'm back onto my hook shank here. And then you can pack that back and just finish your head per normal. I know this is slightly vague, having only done the head. I'm just trying to save some time here. But you just come in with your razor blade. This one is extremely dull. But I can cut that perfect jerk head right back to where I would. And I'm saving so I have a nice kind of veil for my collar here. Switch it up and cut the other side. Again, just kind of drawing and poking with the blade, pulling it down at an angle when you do it. And now I have this nice flat keel box to help glue those eyes to. I have the big wide base. I have keel weight underneath the fly, helping to control the orientation from the kind of destabilized kind of jerk head. That Mark Sedotti keel box is probably the most efficient way to intentionally and kind of preemptively keel that fly, so you have this perfect high and tight jerk head on a weighted platform. So the reason why I'm fond of the lead wire is because I can create that high and tight shape with the Mark Sedotti keel box, or I can create the BULKhead and put realistic eyes on it. Neither of which you can kind of do with the bead chain or the lead eyes. The bead chain and the lead eyes kind of limit your head shape to kind of forcing you to doing that kind of mullet bulk style head, which is perfectly fine. And then you have these kind of, white, black pupil or matte, and certainly dumbbell eyes can be more realistic than that. But I'm quite fond of the lead wire, but I want to demonstrate how to do lead eyes and how to get a really clean head and how I manipulate the dubbing loop, because a lot of times, especially in the trout world, you see dubbing loops figure eighted and wrapped around eyes multiple times, and I do it much simpler, and it's more about packing the material in place to covering the gap and getting it perfectly smooth. So let's start our thread base here. And something I'll add is if you are fishing, or if you're tying with eyes that have a really big gap between the pupils, a really large hourglass, put down a bigger thread base right here, because that's going to fill up your hourglass and make the eyes easier to tie in. So the way I like to get these in place is I'm just going to come with, say, 3 wraps over the same angle and then flip them under. And then if you keep that same angle, because you flipped them under, it's now actually the opposite, and you've done a figure 8 even though you wrapped the same direction the entire time. And that's about the spacing I like. If you look at this, that's a hook eye. I have like a full hook eye's worth of space, and that's where my eyes are tied down. And then you can keep that angle going for, say, 5 or 6 turns, cinch that down. Give that 5 or 6 turns in the opposite direction, cinch that down. And then I just make sure that my eyes are flat relative to my hook eye. And then these are the money wraps. You actually want to go over the eye, but under the hook shank. Over the eye in the back, under the hook shank. So I'm never taking a wrap over the hook shank, but it's over the eye, under the hook shank, always. And just repeat that. And that cinches down those kind of cross wraps and puts a boatload of tension on those suckers. And now those are locked in place. So once your dubbing loop is all spun up and all your fibers are heavily preened back here, I'm going to try to fit basically my entire collar behind my lead eyes. And you can see the junction is right here. This base, that's all collar material. This is all head material. So I'm going to try to fit all of that behind those lead eyes, and you can work up to the lead eyes pretty fast, and then really pack it behind the lead eyes. And then what I like to do is I'm simply going to come in. I'll give that one more turn. So there's kind of one turn ahead right there. But I don't figure 8 these eyes. I don't do anything of the sort. I don't come over the top. I try to always come over the bottom so I can hide all that thread right there. And then when you go to do this top wrap, really preen it back towards those eyes and get it seated really tight to those eyes. And now I have this just tiny little thread gap right there, very, very small. And then all of these front wraps are going to go towards pushing that over the top. And every time I come, I'm really preening these back and trying to pack it in behind this hook eye so that it all falls over those gaps and hides them. I'm going to tie off my dubbing loop, 2 turns, pull up and down at the same time, really preen all that back. Then you can come in and build up a little thread head right here. Throw me a half and throw me a whip. You're good to go. Now the reason why I want to demo this, aside from showing that I just simply go under the eyes one time to bring that dubbing loop in front. There's no figure eighting, there's no anything. You just bring it up to the eye, pack 1 or 2 wraps behind the eye, bring it underneath, and pack it all right in front. And you can see I don't have any thread valleys or gaps or anything like that. But I also want to show you how to trim the head. So I simply contour my eyes. I'll basically do your bulkhead cut, which is from your hook eye up to your hook point. You can do that off to the sides and everything, but I always pull that fiber out, pull it out away from the shank, get a nice kind of clean head on the bottom, and then I cut basically flush underneath. And really just follow right under those eyes. And if you need to, you can come and clean up that little 90-degree angle right there. Now to do the front, you can see I have that nice kind of contoured head look right there on the bottom. Now to do the front, I like to just kind of, you can take that bulkhead cut all the way around the fly. And then the biggest thing people always struggle with, but you got to pull those fibers out away from the head and kind of shape that forehead region. It's not the collar. The collar really never gets trimmed, but it's that weird in-between zone from like the face to the collar. You got to get back in here and really pull this stuff up and cut it nice and accurately. because this fiber doesn't bend and move and sway, but it stays however you put it. So you want to cut it to a nice accurate shape. And you can see how that's all folded back around the eyes, and I have no thread valleys, no air gaps, no missing pieces in there, but it's this kind of perfectly saturated head all the way around my lead eyes. Now the way I like to get a really clean leading edge right here, and this is something that you can do with the BULKhead ties as well, but when you come in to glue your head cement your thread, I kind of just liberally apply it everywhere, and I really intentionally get it onto my Strung Fuzzy Fiber. And then you take it and you use a really retired old bodkin that you use for every dirty job like epoxy and whatnot, and just drag that back into those fibers and set them back at a nice intense angle. Basically push them right into your eyes here. Clean out your hook eye if you got any glue in the hook eye. But that'll give you a super clean, nice abrupt kind of leading edge that's perfectly flat right at the head of that fly. So that right there is a handful of the techniques I like to use to create lightweight versions of this pattern, both in the round tubular BULKhead silhouette, but also the high tight silhouette, utilizing the lead wire that's in the accessories kit, but also utilizing things that most of you probably have, like bead chain and small lead eyes or brass eyes. And I hope that gives you not only an action counterpart to a weightless suspending fly, but also a lightweight kind of jigging fly. But it's also going to open up the pattern to people who have floating lines or prefer floating lines, or have really low water conditions and they want something that they can work just really subtly and fish a foot underwater and things like that. So those are some of the techniques that I use, and I hope that helps you guys out. And as always, happy tying, and I'll see you in the next one.